Welcome to the Story Geeks Show, part of Orange Grove 55. Today we're going to be talking about Superman. So we're getting a little bit off Disney right now and talking about the DCEU, but it has its connections to Disney because obviously James Gunn is the director of Superman, and James Gunn is the Guardians of the Galaxy guy for Marvel. So it'd be really interesting to see how these two cinematic universes take shape as they kind of reassess what they're up to. I got two fantastic commentators today. Mr. Seymour Duck is with us. How you doing, Seymour?
Hello, hello. I'm doing pretty great.
That's
I'm glad
awesome
to be here for the first time, actually.
Oh yeah, first time Story Geeks guest. Well, both of you are first time Story Geeks
Same.
guests, so this is phenomenal. Yeah. So we got Seymour Duck. We'll get to where you can find him in a minute, but we also have Jared from Capture the Magic. How you doing, Jared?
Doing well. Thank you for having me. Yeah, first time here as well, but I like to talk about movies in depth at an annoying pace, and my wife gets tired of hearing me talk about it. So I'm happy to be able to talk about it in depth with other people. So happy to be here.
Then you, Jared, are a story geek, and we are glad to have you as a part of this. So yeah, today it's all about Superman on the Story Geeks. So I think most people who watch OG 55 know who Mr. Seymour Duck is because he's a legend in the building. But Seymour, where can the folks find you if they're looking to find especially information on earnings calls or anything to do with the marketplace? Seymour is phenomenal for that. In fact, he logged in thinking that maybe we were going to do a Comcast earnings call video, and we're not. We're talking about Superman. But
yeah, that's what happens when you work midnights. You forget what's happening in the daytime.
Dude, I don't work midnights ever, and I still forget what's happening in the daytime. But how can people find you, Seymour, if they want to hear some of your wisdom?
Yeah, you can just find me on X at Mr. Seymour Duck.
That's awesome. Very cool. And then I got a chance to talk to Jared. What were we talking about? We were talking about the leadership transition and whether or not it was going to be Dana or Josh or whatever. Loved Jared's takes on those. So, Jared, where can the people find you and your takes?
Excuse me. You can find me at Cap the Magic everywhere on YouTube, Twitter, X, Instagram, all those places. YouTube is my main hub. I do daily videos over there on theme parks and pop culture, and I did a little mini review of Superman, and I think my opinion will be different from the majority, which is fine. But that's where you can find me at Cap the Magic and all the ramblings and things that I do over there.
Yeah, so definitely go follow these guys. They've got really cool stuff to say, and I enjoy their opinions. So thanks for joining me to talk about Superman. Obviously, my name is Jay Sherer. I am a part of the Orange Grove 55 network of shows with the Story Geeks here, and I love being a guest to talk about Josh and Dana, and who's going to be the next president of Disney. That's always fun too. So you can find me here on Orange Grove 55, or you can find me at How Stories Work with Jay Sherer. I am a writer, director, and I like to go deep into films and trying to figure out what made them good and why we should pay attention to them and how I can pay attention to them to be a better filmmaker. So How Stories Work with Jay Sherer is where you can find me, or right here on Orange Grove 55. Today we're talking about Superman. And I think before we dive into a deeper discussion, because we like to get really deep into things here in the Story Geeks, I would like to hear just, what's your scale of 1 to 10 rating on Superman? So I'll start with you, Jared. What would you say, scale of 1 to 10, 10 being, the Citizen Kane of comic book movies? What is your rating of Superman?
I would say for me, this movie was very whelming. Not overwhelming, not insanely underwhelming. I give it about a 5. I will put a background. I'm a massive Superman fan. I grew up reading the comics. It was the first superhero I was really ever into, got me into comics. So I am very particular about Superman and some things. So I do have some critiques about some of the choices. But I would say it's watching it. I was like, a lot of people I think are going to enjoy this. I just found myself kind of being like, So I think 5 is where I'd kind of put this.
That makes sense. And in fact, the interesting part was when we were talking about when Jared and I were on a podcast together last, he was like, "Oh, I really want to talk about Superman." And as soon as he started talking, I'm like, "He's perfect for a Story Geek show." And your background with Superman is also perfect because I was always more of a Batman fan. I've read Superman, but I was more of a Batman guy.
Batman's cool. I got Superman, a little Batman, a lot of X-Men. My uncle was a really big comic book collector, and so he would bring me down boxes of things to read, and that's what he was kind of into. So that's what I got into. So yeah, I eventually came more Marvel over the years, but Superman's kind of where I started it all.
Okay, perfect. That would be good for some of these questions that we have coming up. That would be awesome. So we got a 5 out of 10 from Jared. Mr. Seymour Duck, what do you give it on a scale of 1 to 10?
So as a Superman movie, I give it a 6.5.
Oh, okay.
Because it if it was just a superhero movie that wasn't Superman, I would have rated higher. But because it was Superman, it needed to get a few things right. And I feel like it didn't get those points right across for being a Superman movie. And it felt like a James Gunn movie.
I think we're going to get into that part of the conversation a lot in this discussion because my wife and I came out of the theater saying the exact same thing. And what's interesting is I have some friends who have said that they thought that this movie was a 10. Like they're like, oh, this movie's amazing. And they're big Superman geeks too. I personally felt like it was like a 5.5. And I'm mainly giving it a 5.5 because I don't think it was by any means a bad film. And this is something that we can get into a lot later in the conversation and maybe even a completely separate show because I think there's a lot to say here. But it did make me more excited for James Gunn's version of the DCEU, which is weird to say that like, oh, you came out of the gate at a 5.5, but you're still excited about it. And I go, yeah, because some of the things that he was showing me kind of give me the impression that he has a very clear vision for what he's trying to accomplish. And that's where I think Marvel is kind of stumbling is like some of their people that are making films have a really clear vision. And then sometimes it's like, I don't know what you're doing. I have no clue what you're doing here.
Yeah, I can agree with that for sure.
Yeah. So it'd be interesting to see how that shakes out over time. But let's get into some of these deeper questions and you know, some of this stuff will come out as we talk about all this. But the DCEU has struggled ever since the Nolan Batman trilogy ended, really. I mean, like that was like the height of DC's movie making. Some people will argue that the newer Batman with Robert Pattinson is also awesome. And I agree, it's really good. I don't think it's quite as good as the Nolan.
That was a good movie until the third act. The third act fell off a cliff for me. Everything up until then, I really enjoyed that movie. I like the detective aspect of Batman. I like the soundtrack. I wasn't big. Robert Pattinson's version, he might improve it over the years, but like gothy Bruce Wayne, like okay. But that third act, I was like, what is this? Until then, I was pretty on board with it.
Well, you know what's interesting that you say that, Jared. My biggest problem with the film is that when they gave the message at the very end, I was like, you just gave a Superman message, not a Batman message. What are you doing? Right? Yeah. I'm going to be hope. Since when has Batman ever been hope for anybody? Like that was just so strange. It's such a strange, because I love the movie. But I thought that part of it was just kind of like, oh man, I liked so much of it leading up to that. But that part kind of threw me for a big loop.
Yeah.
So the first question I have on here for you guys is kind of related to what we were just talking about. What do you think of the so-called Snyderverse versus what James Gunn has done thus far? Because we have Peacemaker, we have Suicide Squad, and we have Superman, all of which are part of the DCEU already. So when you compare, the last version of the DCEU with what we're now getting from the DCEU, Seymour, tell me what you think about this difference. You think it's on the right track or the wrong track, or what have you liked about what DC has done versus what they're doing now?
Interesting. Yes. I don't want to get too controversial here with the DC fan.
No, just jump into controversy. I'm the host, so of course it's going to get controversial.
I wasn't a really big. I wasn't a really big fan with the Snyderverse. I didn't want to get too controversial. But yeah, I wasn't really big. It was a little, there's a middle ground, and I felt like at least with like Superman, it was a little too dark, and with this one, it felt like the opposite, a little too goofy, right? And I wanted in the middle where you with Superman, you have a superhero that you can look up to, so someone where like everyone in the world looks up to, and with some of the past DC movies, like, at least with Superman, right? I didn't get that. With Batman, I liked it because it's Batman, and with Ben Affleck, right? I thought he was great because that's with like we were just discussing with at least the past of the Batman with Robert Pattinson. Hope. You don't want that. You want that with Superman, right? So it felt mixed for me, and especially with the Flash. So that was just and that ending. But it was mixed for me. But I like the path they're going now, and especially with James Gunn, because James Gunn, he said one time in an interview that he likes to, before filming a movie, have a finished script. And a lot of these movies now, even in the past, right, with the DC and Marvel in the past, they didn't have a finished script and they're filming. And you can
Kevin Feige came out and said the other day in the last interview he had that they still do that. He doesn't like go. They called it plussing, and I was like, I was shocked to hear him say they still plan on doing that. I was like, oh my goodness,
that's wild. Yeah, I think you bring up some really good points that we're going to get deeper into, Seymour, because I feel exactly the same way about a lot of what you just said. So, Jared, what do you think? Is this like what did you think of the Snyderverse, and do you think that what James Gunn has done thus far is like turning it over onto a good new vision, or what do you think?
Snyder is interesting. I think he is a great choreographer, like in terms of videography. Like he shoots beautiful scenes. And I like in Man of Steel, there's a lot of, and I went back after watching Superman to watch the Snyderverse movies.
Nice.
And there's great moments in those. I wouldn't say altogether they're great movies. I actually found myself, I like Man of Steel more than this Superman. I think Henry Cavill, I don't have a problem with the casting of Superman movie, but Henry Cavill is solid, but the dark and brooding aspect of Superman is not Superman. And I think that was coming off of Nolan's Batman, and he was an executive producer, and they were trying to go that route. That's not him. I think the Snyderverse gets a lot of hate. I liked Ben Affleck as Batman. I think they just rushed the whole thing. I think Warner Brothers was playing catch up with Marvel, and they were just trying to push it all through way too quickly. It had a lot of potential. So I look back on it now, and I can enjoy it for what it was. Like I said, I think Man of Steel had some really great moments of Superman. The newest Superman movie is much lighter, much more comic booky, which I did enjoy. I liked you're fighting big monsters. You're fighting, the world is used to this type of thing. My worry about this movie was what I went into it and kind of what I came out of it was I never thought James Gunn was the guy to do a Superman movie. I've enjoyed James Gunn movies. He typically does pretty well in an ensemble cast like Guardians. You've got a ragtag group of people. I think that's why he put more characters in the Superman movie. It was very James Gunn to me. And it was very evident to me that James Gunn wrote and directed this. And I like the tone of it better. I guess when it comes to Superman, the current DC, I guess I'm just in a wait and see of what comes after this. But Snyderverse, I know people want it back. It's not going to come back, but I think Ben Affleck might be the best Batman we've seen on screen in terms of like from the comics. Like I actually at first heard about Ben Affleck, I was like, that sounds terrible. Him on screen was great. I loved Henry Cavill. I look back on it better than I did at the time, and I'm just kind of waiting to see on this new one.
Okay, that's fair. I have a very complex opinion of the Snyderverse because, first of all, the studios messed with those movies so badly that I think that the quote I've always given about the Justice League, the Joss Whedon version of Justice League, is that it is the most disappointed I've ever been walking out of a theater.
Oh, I agree.
It was like clearly what had happened was they had said Marvel's doing something cool. We don't like what Snyder's doing. Let's bring in Joss Whedon at a time when Snyder's like really being kicked while he's down, to be honest.
Didn't his daughter commit suicide?
His daughter had just passed away, and it was kind of like one of those things where it was like, okay, cool, we have an opportunity to be more Marvel. And what they did with that movie was just atrocious. The actual Justice League longer version cut is much better.
It actually is. It's long, but it is a much better movie. It actually explains a little bit more, on a lot of aspects.
It totally does. And the ultimate. Oh, go ahead.
The mustache. The mustache.
Well, It's much better. It's the CGI of removing the mustache is much improved.
I would be okay with Superman having a mustache personally.
Yeah,
I think they
me
should have
too.
had that a character choice. He just decided
Why
to,
not?
try it out for a bit.
I like that too. I agree 100% on Ben Affleck being the best Batman we've seen on screen. For whatever reason, I just think he works really, really well as Batman and Bruce Wayne.
What's that like older grizzled Batman where he's kind of like, I don't really care anymore. Like he clearly kills people in those movies. Like that warehouse scene, which is fantastic. I'm like, he killed everybody in there. And you're just like, well, it's a cool scene though.
Yeah. Yeah, totally, and it's good. The BVS, Batman v Superman, is probably the best example of how bad studio interference can be, because there are some threads of that film where if you've just seen the theatrical release, you have no clue why those scenes are in the movie until you see the extended cut or the Ultimate Edition or whatever it's called, and you go, oh, okay, that was foreshadowing this other thing. Okay, now it makes sense. I'm not saying it's a perfect movie because it is not a perfect movie, but it is much better if you see the longer cut of it. And I actually, I think that all of the criticisms of Man of Steel not being an ideal Superman movie are all valid, but I love it for what it is. And I actually think I'm on record as saying I think that Man of Steel has the best trailer in the history of trailers.
Best trailer. Those trailers and that soundtrack, I work out to that soundtrack to this day. Like, I love that soundtrack. I love Jor-El. I love Russell Crowe as Jor-El in that movie. Yeah. I think it's the best iteration of Jor-El we've ever seen. Yep. There were some moments in that movie that are truly like almost inspiring, where he comes out of the thing and he's like, you can save them. You can save them all. You're like, oh, and then you see this version of Superman's Jor-El and you're like, what? Like,
yeah.
What is this?
Yeah, they're galactic bigots. We got to get into that because I don't know how that's going to play out. I forgot
the comic where he said get you a harem of women and forcibly, and you're like, oh, well, that's different.
That's different.
I don't remember
that's
that
a different thing. The last thing I'll say is this: I 100% agree that I would not pick James Gunn to be my Superman director, and so I'm doubling down on what you guys have already said. Tripling down on what you guys have said. And I would also add that to me, Suicide Squad, Peacemaker, all of the Guardians of the Galaxies, broken people learning to work together, even in their brokenness, is like James Gunn's specialty. Like the guy just nails it. It's the reason why I think he's done the best Marvel movies to date, my favorite Marvel movies at least.
He did Scooby-Doo as well, right?
Did he do Scooby-Doo as well?
Yeah, the live action.
Oh, no, I didn't know that. I didn't know that either. I didn't know he did that. That's awesome. So I think it's my main complaint. So I love Peacemaker. I actually think Peacemaker it's a more adult version where Superman feels like you just watched a bunch of Saturday morning cartoons mashed together is what it said, like the live action of Saturday morning cartoons. But I really like what James Gunn has done in the past. That's why I think that what he's going to do in the future is really interesting to me. But I do think it's difficult for, like, personally speaking, if we all had to pick a director, I'm curious about this. I'm going to make this a question because I have a director in mind that I think would be amazing at Superman. If you could pick a Superman director out of all the directors that exist, who would you pick, Jared?
Honestly, I would love to see what Brad Bird would do.
Ooh, that's a really good choice.
I think Brad Bird could do a really good Superman. Even, I forget his name. He directed the latest Mission Impossible. I can't remember his name now. But in that movie Junket, he came out and said he had a vision of doing a Superman movie where the first 5 minutes, nothing is said, but you get this, I don't know if it'd be a montage, but you know who he is, what he was, who he stands for, and it like starts you off the gate right away. And but I think Brad Bird could do a very, very good Superman movie.
Yeah, I think you're right. Is Macquarie, right?
Macquarie. Yeah. He would be another one. I'd be interested to see kind of what he would do.
Yeah, totally. I can totally see that. Seymour, what do you think? Who would you pick to direct if you could pick anybody?
I'm gonna butcher his name. The guy who directed Top Gun Maverick.
Oh, Krasinski?
Yes, he's another one too.
Because when I look at Superman, I think of heroism, right? Mm-hmm. Patriotic, and I want that when I'm watching a Superman movie. Yes. And I feel like, when I was watching Top Gun Maverick, I felt that. So that's the type of feeling that I want to get, and I feel like he would be great with it.
I agree with both of your choices. I think are great. I was going to go with a very classic director and say I would love to see a Steven Spielberg, only because you have a pretty rich history with the creators being Jewish. Steven Spielberg is Jewish. There's some like Messiah-like thinking about who Superman is and what he's come to represent for people. I really like that aspect of it, but I think also, there's. When I compare James Mangold, who I love as a director, to Steven Spielberg when he did Indiana Jones, I go, there's this magical quality that Steven Spielberg brings to films that feels very Superman-esque to me, right? Like this sense of like the John Williams score rises, and you just feel like, oh my gosh, this is magic. You know what I mean? Like this is, and I feel like he could do an amazing Superman movie. So it's kind of maybe a cliche answer because he could direct a lot of cool things in a lot of cool ways. But I would love to see him do one. So I think we all agree, like it's not that James Gunn did anything wrong, and he's one of my favorite directors, to be honest. I mean, if I could be an understudy of anybody, I'd love to work under him and just see what he was up to. But my comment would be this: it feels like James Gunn is reacting to the criticisms of the Snyderverse, and that's the part I didn't like about it. I was like, oh, it's almost like you just went so over the top happy and sort of hopeful that it doesn't feel quite as authentic as I feel like it should feel.
Well, I feel like Superman movies getting this thing too, where it's like you got him where like Superman Returns was trying to be almost a clone of Donner, and you're never going to touch like Christopher Reeve is the OG best version of Superman. His Clark Kent to Superman transition and the way he acted those, you'll never see it again. And then you get trying to be too much like Donner, and in this one I felt like there was a little bit of that, not a whole lot with this movie, but some love to Donner. And then you're right, reacting a lot to the Snyderverse, trying to be the opposite, and just instead of it being its own entity telling a specific type of story you want to tell, many times you get caught up in the weeds of trying to pay homage or go opposite of this, and I think it just gets kind of convoluted that way.
I agree with you 100%. And there's actually times in this film, which we'll get into in the next question, where I actually feel like I'm like, is this even a Superman film? Because it feels like you were concentrating on a lot of other characters and their B stories, which I thought was kind of weird. I actually wanted to see more Lois, to be honest. I was like, some of this dynamic is awesome.
Well, Mr. Fantastic, I think, was the best character in the whole movie.
100%.
Which is a problem in a Superman movie. Because I want Superman to be the best character, but he was enjoyable. In the cast, I actually really liked the cast. I think from top to bottom, Corn Sweat was solid. I didn't really have any issues with that. I think it was, what's his name? Nicholas Hoult. I think he was a pretty good Lex, much better than Jesse Eisenberg's, put it that way, for sure. But he already comes out looking better in that end. But it's, I completely agree.
Yeah. I think the reason why I say I'm looking forward to the rest of the DCEU is because I feel like this was sort of the pressure on Peter Safran and James Gunn to make a Superman movie had to be insane. Like they were coming always from an underdog standpoint. It's like the last Suicide Squad was awful, so you can kind of do anything you want to and it'd probably be good. Or like even with Peacemaker, like none of us have grown up with Peacemaker to the point where we're like, oh, we know who he is and you better get it right. So I feel like now that we've got the big tentpole Superman film out of the way, it's like now we can all take a deep breath and like you can just get into your rhythm, as opposed to being like, are you going to fail on the first time out the gate with your Superman movie?
Right.
But let's get into the movie a little bit more. Seymour, what do you think works in this film and what doesn't work in this film?
Oh, okay. Give me a moment to think about that and go to Jared.
Jared, what do you think works in this film? I can
tell you.
Yeah.
I think what works, I like the tone. Okay. I think Superman being a Boy Scout, although at times over the top, like saving the squirrel, but I get it. Like you're trying to set up, he is a Boy Scout. I think the Lois and Clark dynamic was pretty solid. Mm-hmm. I think Lex he wasn't as good as Gene Hackman by any means. He was a good Lex. Some of the stuff was we'll probably get into that. Some of the story elements of that, and I think some of the moments he saves the woman in the car. Like he has a few Superman moments. I just don't think there were enough. And the things that I don't think that work for this, basically for me, what it comes down to is you start the movie out and you're told what happened. I feel like you should be shown and basically you start the movie out with Superman getting his ass kicked, and he just gets his ass kicked all throughout this movie. And he has a moment where he kind of overcomes it, but I don't feel like his triumphant, like, I'm going to now be Superman moment was enough for as much punishment as he took. I think it's like a Punisher movie. Like, he goes through some terrible stuff to justify the things that he is going to do to these people that do bad things. And I just felt like it was unbalanced in that way. And his Superman was it was kind of goofy at times, but I think that's the directing. I think like right after it should have been, in my opinion, more of a moment when he kills Ultraman basically. Right. And immediately it goes to a joke. He's like, I'm doing important stuff over here. And there were moments where like the scene with Lois and Superman in the apartment, let's undercut the whole thing by the background fight going on. So like kind of the Marvel-esque thing of like nothing was able to ever have a moment. It always had to be undercut with a joke. Right. And I just think in the whole, it wasn't. I understand wanting to go a depowered Superman route, and I think James Gunn has said that, like more golden era, which I don't have a problem with that. You can make an argument Superman's been OP'd, and it's like, how do you write that story? But it's to the point where he was so underpowered, I found it annoying most of the time. So it had elements. Like there were moments that, like I said, the casting I think was solid. The tone of it was good. I just don't. To me, it was just a movie where it was a version of Superman I've never seen before. And I would have liked to have seen more like him actually saving Lois, more scenes with him, like more. It wasn't as bad as some of the Snyder stuff where it's like so quick, but this movie was frantically paced. Yeah. I just feel like nothing was able to breathe too much. Yes. Everything was just kind of like next thing. And you're just sort of like, what happened? Like I get to the end of it and was like, I don't even know what I just saw.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think like to double down, David Cornsweet, great Superman. Definitely a different Superman than Henry Cavill. So I wouldn't even compare the two kind of, because they're just very, very different from that standpoint. I was worried about Rachel Brosnahan and her being Lois Lane, but I think she was fantastic to the point where I was like, their relationship and how they interact is actually the most interesting thing to me in this film. And so kind of having her be sort of more of a side character who has one in-depth scene with him and then has to get rescued later by him, I felt like was probably not the best use of Lois Lane. But again, we'll have other movies. It'll be fine. I thought there was probably too many characters. Look, James Gunn is great at an ensemble. You said it earlier, Jared. He's great at an ensemble. But when you bring in the Justice Gang and they're mostly jokes, and it's not like I dislike them. They're cool. I would watch a movie of theirs, right? But it just felt like it was, again, a distraction from Superman. And I'm here to see Superman.
Well, it was also, to me, like Superman wasn't respected. Like he would show, like Superman's supposed to show up, and everyone's like, "Oh man, it's Superman," and he would show up, and they're just like, "Oh, what are you doing here? Or what's going on here?" And like, it was just kind of disrespect. And I almost forgot, I hated Krypto in this movie. I hated that dog. My wife is a dog lover. She hated him in this movie, and I just felt like he was in it way too much. And then even at the end, when Lex and Superman have their standoff, you're like, "Okay, here is the culminating moment." Nope, here comes Krypto, and we're doing a Hulk versus Loki smashing scene. You're just like, can we have any moment here where it's just not undercut by something else? And I found myself frustrated at many moments of this movie.
Yeah, I hear you on that. The one thing I would say that I thought from a casting perspective, I love casting Nicholas Hoult. I love having him be a little bit more of a Gene Hackman-esque Lex Luthor. You either have I mean, Eisenberg was weird because he was kind of like this. He's kind of like the Elon Musk of bad guys, right?
Yeah. Or like a tech bro.
Yeah, tech bro kind of version.
Lex Luthor. Yeah.
Maybe Zuckerberg is a better example, but the thing I didn't like about Nicholas Holt's portrayal, which I'm actually going to blame James Gunn for, not Nicholas Hoult, because it almost felt to me like Nicholas Hoult was in a different movie at times, because he was so genuine in his anger and his upset and his like, and Gene Hackman was also genuine, but almost more like he could break the fourth wall at any time during the movie and be like, isn't this ridiculous, guys, that I'm doing this, but I'm doing it anyways. And we all would have been like, that's hilarious, and I'll go with it. I think Nicholas Hoult was not that ridiculous. My wife put it this way, and I know why she says it this way. I might describe it a little bit differently, but she said it almost felt like he thought he was being directed as if he was in a Shakespearean play, and everybody else was in like a kind of goofball cartoon. And it was just kind of like, oh, yeah, that's weird. It doesn't.
Well, and also like, why is he so? Like, you never really got an answer to like, why does he hate Superman so much? Like, you can tell he hates him, and you're like, I get it, you don't like it, but like, what happened here? And there's never really any. I mean, if you know the comics, like there's a lot of reasons as to why Lex has issues with Superman, but none of them were really touched upon in this movie.
Well, and to that point, what's really fascinating about you saying that, which I agree with 100%, is that even Eisenberg's character, we sort of knew why he didn't like Superman, is because he felt like he was trying to be the god of the world, and there was another guy who had powers and he didn't, right? So it's kind of like, well, how do I bring this guy down a notch because I want to be the god of this world? Whereas in other like even the Gene Hackman Superman, you know, he's really just trying to be a crony capitalist, and is like, this guy's just really obnoxious. The fact that, so I've got to deal with him, but only because I want to. And so you kind of, they had those elements for Nicholas Holt's Lex, but to your point, it just seemed like he hated him more so than he wanted to have Lexland or whatever it was, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it just, it was handled a little bit weirder. But let me just say for the record, I'm a huge Nicholas Hoult fan, and I think he's actually the best actor in the entire movie from an acting standpoint.
I agree. His acting was, and I agree with you. I think it was more of a direction choice about how he played it, because he is a good actor. When I heard he was playing Lex, I'm like, okay, I'm on board. And he looked the part, like shaved head, and like he was very believable as Lex. Although I will say the whole fighting thing where he's controlling and he knows his patterns and basically he's almost a controller fight. I was like, okay, even if that were to happen, Superman would be smart enough to figure out what is happening here and alter his fighting style. Like, he would do something. And I just found that to be kind of, again, frustrating. I'm like, okay, can we not really? Okay. Like you can say the things before Superman can react to them, which is kind of like, in a movie 100%. Where a man can fly. I know we're
right. That was a little bit annoying. I'm going to turn it over to you, Seymour, in a minute. But one last thing, I'll say, just to keep this ball rolling a little bit, is that I felt like the pace was so frenzied that the reveal that it's essentially Bizarro Superman. I can't remember what they call him. What's the official name?
Ultraman.
Ultraman, yeah. I felt like that reveal was so, hey, by the way, this is what it is, and we're moving on. That it was like, oh man, like that's a big deal. Like they cloned Superman. Like we need to have a whole movie about the fact that Lex is cloning Superman and like what they're doing with it and like what the implications of cloning are. It's like, no, it is. I beat him up and we got rid of him and it's fine.
Well, and it's like even in Superman 4 where they did that. I mean, they had an all-out fight on the moon. Like these guys were like Zod level fights, and this one it's just sort of like it kicks him into a black hole. And then again, it was like the pace of, like you were saying, he does it. He kills essentially his clone.
Yeah.
And there's no like, I just killed a guy.
Right.
Or like at least in Man of Steel, like I understand why people had issues at the end where he kills Zod.
Right.
I like the idea of putting Superman his no kill rule to a test. And it's like Zod sits there, and like I rewatched this a couple days ago, and he's like, stop. And Zod's like, never. Like he is not going to stop. He is going to kill these people. What are you going to do about it? So he kills him, and his immediate reaction is just anguish about what he just had to do. Like he didn't want to do it. He was forced to do it, and he's visibly upset by it. Mm-hmm. And in this one, he kills his clone, and he's just making jokes and goes out, and you're just like, there's no weight to it. And I was like, he would feel something. Like it's Superman. Like he would have a moment or be like, I didn't want to have to do that, or what. There was nothing of that. And that also bugged me.
Yeah, I totally agree. Last thing I'll say about one of the things I thought was really cool is that, like, and you said this earlier, Jared, and I'm going to use a different example because you said like when he's saving the lady in the car when he catches the building, but when he saves the little girl, which was in the trailer, so everybody who's seen the trailers has seen him save the little girl. I mean, those shots are awesome. I wish there was more of those shots. Those shots were like phenomenal.
Yep, I wanted way more of those, and I like. you save the cat out of the tree, you save the squirrel, like you said. But I feel like these things should have been done way earlier on in the movie. Like that should have been one of the first things we see Superman do is he'll go out of his way to save a squirrel.
Right.
And he's that much of a Boy Scout. And he's like, hey, don't kill the giant monster, do these other things. The Justice Gang is doing whatever they're doing. But it was even then, it's like they didn't listen to him. They're just like, whatever, he's being a Boy Scout.
Yeah.
And yeah, but I agree. More moments like that of those types of Superman moments, I think would have been really good to have. Just a few more of those, even sprinkled
100%,
in.
100%. All right, Seymour, what do you think? What worked for you in this movie? What didn't work as much?
Okay, so I wrote some points down just to get my thoughts out, and I'm conflicted because as a superhero movie, I liked it, but as a Superman movie, not so much. Which is why I'm like in the middle. But like the actions, the vibrant, world, the buildings and everything, supporting cast, everything, I liked it. But then it's like you get to the point where it's like it's a little too humorous, a little too on the other side, and that's not Superman. Mm-hmm. But if that was any other superhero movie, I would have been okay with it. You had the cast was great, but then it's like, did you have a little bit too much of the cast? All right, I wanted more of Lex and Superman, and even Superman and Clark Kent, and his backstory. And I felt like we didn't get enough of that. We have too much people in there, but it's a mix, right? So it's like, as a superhero movie, I liked it. Everyone, storyline, everything was written well, but then it got a little, diverged from being a Superman movie. It just felt overstuffed for adding a lot of, it's like, oh, this is the first Superman movie, so we need to add a lot of these characters, these cameos for DCU, and it's like, I wanted a nice Superman movie, and sometimes it wasn't a bad movie, but it's just, I felt like it, it was a great superhero movie. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think there is one of the interesting things about this film. I tend to like, even though they've been done to death, I tend to like the more isolated, character-driven stories, which are oftentimes origin stories, which, yeah, we've done origin stories to death, and I get that. The problem I have is that when you put Superman, and the reason why I say it's like a bunch of Saturday morning cartoons mashed up is because it's almost like there's a villain of the week, like 3 or 4 times in this film, right? Yeah. And the problem I think I have with that is that I don't think that we get enough time, and you kind of referenced this earlier, Jared, we don't get enough time to sit with the character and figure out, like, really, who is this guy? Really, the only time we really get that is when he's either... Because we don't really get it when he's with his parents. Now, other people might argue against that, but I think when he's with his parents, we're just getting their perspective on the world. The only time we get his perspective on the world is when he's actually arguing with Lois in the apartment scene.
Yes.
And to your point, Jared, they have a villain of the week in the background that we're being attracted to the whole time. And I think that makes it hard for us to gravitate toward the character. And I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I was hoping that, I know that in the comics, Superman has moved on from being, truth, justice, and the American way into this like global superhero, right? Mm-hmm. But I was really hoping that we would get a little bit smaller of a start to where he was trying to be a representative of the United States. Now, I know that we'll talk about this in a bit, but we have the whole like, is it Russia, Ukraine? Is it Israel, Gaza? Like, what is it, right? Like, we have that whole thing going on, and then Superman is a representative. But one of the things I felt like that missed the boat a little bit for me is that at a time when I feel like Americans are at each other's throats and not able to say, like, what does it mean to be an American? I feel like as a filmmaker, you have an opportunity to say, look, put all the other stuff aside that divides you, and there are core elements to being an American that we can all agree upon, and we can showcase him in this light. And I feel like they were definitely not going down that route. Like, we're going to avoid that at all costs. And that made me a little bit bummed out because so here's what I think happens in a lot of comic books. And Jared, I'm interested in your opinion about Superman comics specifically in regards to this. But when you get the origin story, they're very relatable, and we get to kind of see how they think about things and see how they approach the world, and then we kind of get a better feel for like what makes them tick. Which by the way, I liked about Man of Steel, because they leaned into the immigrant side of things and leaned into him being a person who didn't know what his identity should be. There's actually some really deep emotional beats there where it's like, I'm not even your son. You're not my dad. Of course I'm your dad.
There's some great with Kevin Costner and Diane Lane as Mom, Pa Kent. Those are some of the best moments of that movie are those type of moments
100%.
Where he clearly holds back and his dad's like, yeah, you could have hit him. Could have. And he's even like, I don't necessarily like the scene, but he's like, well, do I just let all those kids on the bus die? And he's like, I don't know. Yeah. And but basically he's a guy that's trying to raise a superhuman, and he doesn't have answers, but all he has is his morals, and whatever you're going to decide to do, you are going to impact the world for good or for worse. And I think it really, but instead of him just taking his parents' values, even from a young age, it's like he's been internalizing this and really thinking about it. And they kind of take the version from the comics, and like he kind of goes off on his own on those boats, and he's doing things. And you know, in Man of Steel, who he is. Like, you have no question about who he is. Like, he holds back at times, and he is not, that's why him killing Zod has such an impact.
Yes.
And I agree with this one. It was like, you don't really know what his view is. And I think there was so much you could have got into about Superman stops a war. And what does that mean? Like, when he does these things, what's the real world impact? And I think there's a lot you could get into with that would be very interesting. And they really didn't get into it at all. Like, they just kind of brushed through it really quickly. And it was just corruption, which, okay, fine. Like, countries are corrupt and things. But there's just so much there. Like, I felt like there's so much more meat left on that bone that was just not even touched after they kind of initially, touched it a bit.
That's exactly it. And I think that the problem you have as a storyteller is that when you break down the world into a more simplistic goals and objectives, like who I'm growing into a man, who am I supposed to be, right? What we get is we get a chance to feel that character out in those smaller moments. You're still having big fights, and it's still a superhero movie. But just like in the comics, as soon as you go, okay, now there's these bigger existential threats, and it's not just what is Superman worried about in the Man of Steel film and Zod coming back and how do I deal with this, but now we're dealing with the villain of the week. Now all of a sudden it can become this thing where we are disconnected from the character and we're just watching things happen on screen for the spectacle of it, right? A lot of times you run into this when it's like, a writer will have a really great character arc. I mean, it's happened to both Star Wars and it's happened to Lord of the Rings, where it's like the characters will have this really great character arc, and then it'll be like, can you give us more of that character? And you go, well, the character had their arc. It's difficult for a character to have multiple arcs. Right. And so I think that what you see is you almost see Superman. I'm not going to say he doesn't have an arc, but his arc is really shallow. It's not a big arc where he's learning, at least in my opinion. And so we don't get to know him as well, and I think that's a little bit more difficult. So, so I think we're all on the same page with a lot of this stuff.
I wonder though if the pacing for that is because let's say the normal audience who watches superhero movies wouldn't care as much as people who they dive into the comics and understand Superman.
Yeah, you might be right about that.
Well, at his core, I think the thing I don't think James Gunn, from even his own statements, really understands who Superman is. And if you don't get Superman, he can be tough, because you look at him, you're like, well, how are you supposed to write a story about a guy that basically nothing but a rock from his home planet can hurt him? But his biggest strength is also, as cliche as his weakness is his humanity. He cares so much. And most of the time, Superman is holding back. And some of the best Superman stories were ones where he no longer can hold back. And he actually, it was from Man of Steel, where Jor-El tells him, you've grown stronger than we ever imagined. The only way you'll continue to grow stronger is by pushing your limits. And you have these moments where Superman pushes himself beyond a limit that he's known he can do. But he also understands like the danger. So he's constantly always having these it's like a big brother fighting with your little brother. Like, I don't want to hurt him, but I want to resolve this issue. And it's like there's a lot there you can get into. And Superman many times can become very soap opera. I mean, Smallville did that, where it's like the angst and the powers and the responsibility. And there's a lot of places you can go with it. And I think he's a deeper character than people usually give him credit for. Like if you look at some of the older runs in the 90s, like some of those are really really good runs about just who he was and what he stood for. And a lot of times, like I think Man of Steel came close. I mean, he was probably he was very stoic. Mm-hmm. He was very, like, you knew who he was. You didn't have questions about that. And I think this one was just a little bit, yeah, like you were saying, the arc is more shallow, and it just didn't have a lot there to really get into a lot. And there were parts of the movie where they could have done it, and it just like it was a real quick thing, and it just goes back to the next, like you were saying, the villain of the week, the next thing you do, and that part left me a tad bit frustrated just throughout the movie. I'm just like, there's so many, and I think I even say that James Gunn even said he didn't get Superman until he got Crypto. And I'm like, how does that make any sense? Like the dog doesn't play that big of a role. Like he's, I don't know. I just don't think James Gunn really, and in my opinion, Superman is truth, justice, in the American way. That's the center point of it. And from there, you can take it international. But like you were saying, you bring the story local and then you expand on it. But you always have to be willing to bring it back in as well. And I think that's where Marvel's gotten into trouble, is now they're wherever they're at. Precisely. Like, you know, they never had a story that brought like Spider-Man back into Brooklyn. Yeah. And just have a localized story. Yeah. I want to pick up on two things there because we're getting into the next question, which I think is awesome. So the first thing I'll say is my analogy from where Marvel is at is the last thing you want to do as a studio is turn the conversation about your franchise into the comic book store conversation where all of us nerds are gathered around comics going like, that one's not cool. This guy's clearly overpowered in this one and that. Like, as soon as you go into that level of depth, you lose the general audience, because the general audience goes, I don't care about any of that stuff. Right. I just came to be entertained. And that's where I think Marvel has gotten to. It's gotten so complex. And so you need to see the previous one to understand the next one. I think Fantastic Four actually did that really well. But for the most part, Marvel's been struggling there. So I think you don't want to get into that. We're only making movies for the ultra nerds. You're making movies for the ultra nerds that are approachable from the general audience. And that's the kind of balance that you have to kind of strike there. And so you guys started talking, or you, Jared, started talking about who is Superman? What is he meant to be? What is he showcased to the world? How is he interesting? And why have so many people gravitated toward him as a superhero? And I think you nailed a lot of it for me. I think that if you look at like the time frame in which Superman came out, this is going to be what is the actual decade? Is it the 30s that Superman came out? It's the 30s because it's getting ready to go into public domain. Yeah, as a whole thing. So I'm pretty sure it's like early 30s. I think it was early 30s. And so you have this idea that like America is not yet a global superpower, right? This is post World War I. We were not super affected by World War I, whereas Europe was very affected. And yet there's still a large portion of immigration coming in and people trying to figure out what America really is and what America really means. And you have these two guys that write this character who's like, hey, this guy stands for truth, justice, in the American way, but he's technically an alien, which is a lot of people have already picked up on the immigration kind of understanding of him being an immigrant and how that works. And him trying to instead of him trying to say like, well, America is pretty bad in a lot of ways. I'm going to embrace the values that make America great. Not to use a phrase of any politician, but I'm going to try and bring about like what we should all hope for. And to your point, Jared, the best times about Superman is when he's trying to figure out, man, I'm trying to do the right thing, but Lex Luthor is trying to do things that I think are capitalism taken to its extreme, which it shouldn't be. So now I got to deal with that. And you can't just punch it. You can't punch your way out of that problem, right? Yeah. Like that's a problem where you have to inspire other people to be better, right? Like, so I think that when you make him an aspirational character, when you make him wrestle with, hey, look, the world's not, the Christopher Reeve Superman did this amazing, where it's like, you can't just show up and state what the values should be. That's not what we have to deal with these things every day. And you have to live them. You have to live the values of what you want to, you have to live them. And the values that you're spouting don't help me on the street in Metropolis.
because I got to get money, man. And you're talking, oh, yeah, we'll do the right thing. Well, I don't have money to do the right thing. So these are the conflicts, right? Like Superman is this idealized thought process about what the United States and subsequently the world should be, and everyone else is kind of like, yeah, but it's not that way, dude. So we have to like deal with that. And then Superman wrestling with that problem is, to me, what makes Superman interesting. Is not like Batman, where it's like he's us and he's like, well, how do I bring order to chaos? Superman is something different than us, which we're trying to aspire to, and now we have to navigate the world by going like, wait, if I hold these values, what does that mean? If I have to make an A-B choice, that's where you put Superman. You have to make the A-B choice. Which one is it, Superman? The world's not as black and white as you think. There's lots of shades of gray. And he's like, I don't know. You know, like then he has to wrestle with that.
Well, and I think Superman in this movie, I feel like, I'm not going to say they made him dumb, but they kind of made him naive.
Yeah,
and Superman is not he's not like a genius, but he's not dumb. He's very intelligent.
Right.
And it's very interesting in the comics when he and Batman get together, because very differing world perspectives.
Yep.
You know, and Batman is obviously a genius in the things that he does, and like they can go toe to toe on conversations on these things and just walk away. And I think it's also good they walk away friends, looking at the world different.
Yeah, totally.
And they almost kind of, when there's stuff that they kind of put it to the test, and Superman says, the things I will do, I will show you that this is the way I think, and Batman thinks the other, and these things play out. I think that's also interesting, of just having characters with different perspectives but also working together. And you know, ultimately it's like kind of up to the audience about like which way is the way that you should do this.
Totally.
And you don't have to answer it yourself. You can kind of let people take their own message away from it.
Yeah, that's 100% it. Seymour, what do you think? What do you think? How do you think Superman should be viewed by us?
You see, with this movie, I didn't feel like the Superman that I wanted. It should be viewed as, like, even though he's not a human, he is human. He was, you know, Clark Kent, and I didn't get that in this movie. And you know, and Clark Kent is a real person, where he was raised by simple people who taught him everything that matters. And you know, even you know, when he he has the suit and the crest, and it's an S and it's hope, and it's just, he's very human. And I didn't get that here with that movie. You know, as someone who, you know, he's not a god. You know, he's not a god, but he's a human who has powers like gods. And I feel like, for me, when I look at a Superman, you know, I want it to be viewed. It's someone who's very hopeful, but you know, but yet as a human, if you know what I mean, right?
Yeah, totally.
He has the same worries and issues that humans have.
Yeah.
He just has to be a man that can pick up buildings, but he still has like relationship issues, emotions. Yeah,
he's not a god pretending to be a man, but he's a man with the power of a god who reminds us what it's meant to be a human.
Yeah. Well, that's why it works so well. That's why he plays so well against Batman, against Lois, against alongside his parents, even his alter ego. Like to have he's essentially an immigrant who has all the privilege in the world. He can do kind of whatever he wants to, because that's the power that he has, right? But he knows that, like, when he's Clark Kent, he's like, yeah, but actually making your way in this world is not that easy when you're not super powered, right? Like that's what makes the Clark Kent interesting, is that he has to go about doing things the way that Superman can't do it. He has to do it a different way. And so, and even his parents, it's like, the parent situation is more like, what is it like to have values in a rural area comparative to values in a urban environment that is very different with far more people? This is a really stupid example, but you know, living in an urban environment is very different than living in a metropolitan environment. I'll give you a really, really small example. Even when and this is a real life example, even when we talk about things like gun control, right? Which I'll always bring up with a fellow Canadian, not a fellow Canadian, but a Canadian broadcaster, because that's always a big thing, Seymour. So I apologize to throw you under the bus here. But when I lived in the city, it was like, yeah, I live within a mile of a police department. I don't feel like I need to have a gun for any reason. But when I move out into the rural area, I'm like, bro, if I call the police, the chances they'll get here by the time I need them to get here are so slim that now I have a different opinion on gun control than I may have had in a different situation. Maybe not from a value standpoint, but from a practical standpoint, right? Like something is practical, something is impractical. And that's kind of what you get with like the Ma and Pa Kent versus Metropolis, right? It's like, well, how are things when they're simple? How are things when they're complex? And oftentimes Superman has to remind himself that the simple values are important to bring to the complexity of the world where they get muddy. And I think that we didn't get a lot of that. Ma and Pa Kent were almost more like a emotional, what's the word that our friend Alia uses? Emotional support animal or whatever, than they were people that could really give him deep advice about how he could take this opinion to somewhere else.
I think Ma and Pa Kent were, I'll put it this way. I don't think James Gunn has met any farmers because they came across as just dumb, bumbling people. And that's not who Ma and Pa Kent were. I think the way Kevin Costner played him, I think was very, very how he was in the comics, which is he's a simple man. He's a farmer, but he's very wise. Yep. He has a strong set of morals and values. He instills that in his son. His mom is caring and loving. And in this one, I just felt like they were just, they couldn't work a phone and Pa Kent's crying all the time. And then you come in, is he going to be okay? And you're like, what? He's like, it's just so many things. I just feel like James Gunn never talked to an actual farmer, and this is who he thinks a farmer is. And it was more of a caricature to me. And I did not like Ma and Pa Kent in this movie. I didn't like any of Superman's parents. I didn't like Jor-El or Lauren. I didn't like Ma and Pa Kent. So he turned out pretty good from having some questionable parenting. I guess I could just say in his roots.
Yeah. Let me ask you this question. Do you think that do you think that Lex Luthor really did truly translate the rest of that tape? Or do you think that I thought they were going to say, oh, he used AI and it's actually not their voices. And I can't believe they ended the movie with that still being the case.
So I thought, when that happened in the movie, I was like, what in the world is this? And then James Gunn in interviews has doubled down and said he talked about how that is, that's true. Like it's been confirmed. That's what they said. And I was like,
wow. It
completely changes because the whole point of Jor-El sending him is, their planet's dying and we're sending you here. It's like, Russell Crowe in Man of Steel. He's like, he'll be stronger. Like Laura says, well, he'll be different. He goes, they won't be able to do anything to him, but he can show them, he can be a beacon for them. Like you're sending your son there because you're out of your love. It's your lineage, but he can come here and he can lead a people. He can be something greater than he could have been here and be an example of Krypton on Earth. And he kind of has this dual, like he's a Kryptonian, he's a human. And in this one, like that whole thing about the harem of women, you're just like, wait, what is it? What? And then it's like rule them by force if you have to. And you're like, what? So like, and then his whole worldview is just, he chooses to be good, I guess. You're just like, this is so weird. It doesn't make, I did not like that.
I feel like there's actually a really compelling, and actually this is really solid for the modern day, right? There's this really compelling thing where you could say, okay, he has sort of fascist parents,
right?
that he didn't know were fascists, and then he has these very American traditional like freedom loving parents, and you could make that the central theme of the movie that he has to wrestle against and be like, well, which identity am I going to take? And that would be a really interesting. But just to throw it out there as like an aside is like not how I would have handled it. I'm like, dude, you got to handle it in a better way than that. I don't know. That threw me for a loop because I kept thinking that they were going to reverse that. But now that I haven't listened to James Gunn's interviews, so now that he's even saying that, I'm like,
I've listened to too many of them, and I was just like, I thought the same thing in the movie. I'm like, well, surely this is a ploy by Lex. Like that's the only thing this is going to be, and then it turns out it's not, and then it's like, I don't even know like how to unpack it. If you haven't read the comics, like there's nothing. Right. In the source material that even alludes to this. It's just James Gunn deciding like, no, this is what Jor-El would do. And I was like, no.
Yeah. Yeah. Or if you're at least going to do it, at least make it the central theme and point of the film.
Yes, like he's struggling with that and more instead of this. Yeah, the public, I guess, backlash to finding that out and things like that.
Because again, it felt like, well, here's another episode of the Saturday morning Superman cartoon where this is another issue he has to deal with, and he solves it pretty fast, right? It was just like, oh, okay, that's another villain of the week, and then we're moving on. So before we get to my last question, which is about the message of the film, and we may get into it with this question too, but what do you think, Seymour, about a lot of people were making a big deal about this being an allegory for Israel, Gaza, and Superman stepping into that situation. Do you think that was fair, or do you think that was unfair, or do you think that was misplaced? What was your opinion about that?
I didn't even think about that once when I was watching the movie. I was just watching a movie and I was entertained. I wasn't even thinking any of the politics into that, to be honest. I don't know. A lot of the things I hear is just a little overblown and things like that. And for me, look, I don't deep dive into the comics a lot and stuff. So I guess you can consider me as one of like a normie into the DC universe, and even then, I still didn't like. I was just entertained. I don't look into that stuff. It was simple as that.
Yeah. I thought it was really interesting because I did not realize coming out of the theater, I kind of was like, okay, I think that James Gunn put this in here because we live in a period of there wasn't a lot of blatant imperialism in my younger life, right? Obviously, like you can say that we improperly invaded Iraq. The U.S. improperly invaded Iraq. There's a lot of evidence to support that was like a decision that we made that was not good. We certainly didn't occupy it, though. I mean, you can make that argument. I'm not going to go there. But my point is there wasn't rampant imperialism or colonialism in terms of actually taking land in my younger lifetime that was happening. But that is happening more now. We see Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Gaza. We are hearing rumors about China, Taiwan. There are... I will say that the one conflict that was a little bit more imperialistic or like trying to take over lands was the Bosnia-Herzegovina, Croatia conflict in the early 90s. That was another one where it's sort of like that, but it was not like these giant nation states that were taking on other giant nation states. It was more like small nation states kind of bickering with one another, which is sort of different, right? It doesn't feel as imperialistic. So to put that in the movie, to me, it was like, okay, I did not see it as a commentary specifically on Israel, Gaza. I just saw it more as like hey, we live in a world where we're starting to talk more about big countries fighting other countries for land and resources. And I thought, well, okay, I mean, he's just referencing that. That's a thing that's happening. People seem to take it as like James Gunn was... The context I most often heard was James Gunn is taking a stance and saying that the U.S. and or Israel are wrong in the way that they're treating Gaza. And I'm like, I feel like you put several things on top of that that are not really in the movie in a way that I think is unfair to the filmmaker. I think he's saying what I would say he's saying in this context is that when a nation state decides that another nation state is, especially if there's a bully and there's a bigger one and a smaller one, and they say, we're going to take over the resources, we're going to take over the land, we're going to take over the country. I think what he's saying is that there's always another perspective, and Superman gets to have that perspective because Superman's super powered. I don't think what he's saying, in other words, it's kind of like, hey, look, what if we don't take sides for a minute and we say, what would you do if you had a bunch of powers? It'd almost be like, well, I can control a lot of things, so maybe I would do it this way. But I don't think he was being as politically motivated as a lot of people were saying he was. But maybe I'm wrong about that. Jared, the question I asked Seymour was, did you see it as an allegory for Israel, Gaza? Did you see it as an allegory for Russia, Ukraine? Or has that been overblown?
I feel like it's been overblown. To me, it was bigger bad country versus smaller good country. I didn't feel like there was really anything in there that was specifically kind of like you can put whatever you view the world onto this situation sort of thing.
Yeah.
It could have gotten they could have gotten really specific. I think it's been pretty overblown. I just took it away as you just had a corrupt bigger country that was lined up with Lex that was furthering his plans, and that's kind of how I took it. I didn't really see anything into it, but I could see how people would in that situation if you were kind of looking for it. Like when I heard it was in the movie, I was like, oh, geez, here we go. Like it's going to be some big statement, but I really didn't think it was anything, to be honest.
That's kind of how I felt. We all three kind of felt that same exact way. What I think is really interesting is you could actually I think there's another really compelling story. I mean, one of the things that I've decided, having talked to you guys about this for now over an hour, is that there are at least 3 or 4 super compelling stories. And we got all of them in a sort of mishmash, right? But if we would have gone deep into them, so there is this element of Lex Luthor and Superman that I find really fascinating. And that is Lex Luthor is the archetype of taking capitalism and turning it into something that it was never supposed to be. When the founders of the country said we're going to have a free market and it's going to be based on capitalism, Lex Luthor is the cronyism version of that. He's the military-industrial complex version of that. He's the guy that says, you know what, let's make up a story and invade Iraq so that we can get oil, right? Like that. I'm not making any political statements. I'm just saying that's the kind of guy he would be.
He's the type that everything he does is for his own gain.
100%.
Doesn't do anything that he might do some things to get better public perception, but it's all just to further his either image, money, or power. And that's really Lex Luthor when you boil him down to it. Like there's nothing he does that's altruistic. And then you compare that with Superman, and everything he does is more altruistic for other people. That's kind of where their dichotomy kind of plays.
100%. And I feel like that would have been another compelling story, is if we really got more of a sense of why does he want to build Lex Land and why and what machination. I mean, we know he was messing with the scenario to get his way, but like again, that's kind of like a B story to the like I hate Superman aspect of the story. Right. So I feel like there's like really compelling content in there that we didn't really get on the screen too much. So that leads me to my last question, and then we can go into whatever else you guys want to talk about, or we can close out. And my last question is, does this film actually have a message? Or is it just supposed to be a Saturday morning bubblegum, eat your popcorn, and distract yourself from the world? So which one is it? Is it just a bubblegum entertainment? Does it have a message? And if so, what is that message? What do you think, Jared?
I think this movie's trying to have a message.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just about to say the same thing.
Yeah, I just don't. I think my issue many times with Hollywood is they don't really know what heroism is. Self-sacrifice. So if you don't understand what a hero is at its most basic point, it's hard to make an inspiring movie based on a hero to have this big message coming out of it. So I think it was trying to have a message of good wins out. Superman's a beacon of hope. Like it had those. I kind of put it. It's like they were mixing the cake together. The ingredients weren't quite right. They didn't have the oven to the right temperature, and it kind of came out flat. And you're like, I don't know what this is. Like, it kind of looks like a cake, but I think that's the message of the movie. Was I understand what they were going for. I just don't think they delivered on it. And I do think I agree with you. I think somewhere in here is a good movie. To be honest, I think it's one of those where the way it was cut up and things like that. It's so much of it was shallow, but yeah, I think it was trying to be hope and the things that Superman is. It just didn't. It didn't really know what it wanted to be at the end of the day.
Yeah. What do you think, Seymour?
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like there was a story, like there was a message that was supposed to come in from the story, but too much mishmash of everything put together, right? And you didn't get the message that you wanted, the message of Superman. That's why I stated like, oh, this felt like a great superhero movie, but not a Superman movie, because I didn't get the message that I wanted. The choices you make, the love you're giving, and not by the power you're born with, like, things like that. It wasn't. I didn't get that message. It felt like a mismatch of storylines, which was great as a superhero movie, but like we stated before, how like we wish it was more. We have deep dive into the storylines of the characters, right? It would have brought into the message much more clear.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's what gets into James Gunn's strength, which is you don't have to have an overall moral message in, say, Guardians or some of these ensemble movies. They can be, they're all trying to find their way through the world. Star-Lord learns things toward the movie as it goes on. And the characters, maybe at the end of it, they're closer as a team and they accomplish something together. But those movies aren't really trying to make you, like, they're not trying to preach a message to you. They're not trying to make you feel necessarily a certain way. And I think this may be where, even though I think, like I said, I've enjoyed most of James Gunn's movies, but I don't think every director is meant for every movie. Yeah. And I think when you're talking about a movie that is supposed to inspire you, and I think at the basis of what Superman is, he is supposed to be inspiring. He's supposed to be somebody you strive toward. And probably one reason I started working out was because I grew up reading Superman. I'm like, man, I want to be jacked like Superman. And so it's like you got different things people take away from it. And I just don't think that plays to his strengths. I don't think he is the rah-rah, we're America, American way. This is not him. And I think at the basis of much more leaning in that direction is much more of what Superman is. And I think that probably just comes down to just him as a filmmaker. Yeah. And it works sometimes and it doesn't work for some, stories.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think the only area where I would probably not disagree with you, but like state it differently is I think that the Guardians actually do have a pretty compelling message. It's just that the message is and actually I think it's stated in the first Guardian movie where John C. Reilly's character says, well, I don't think anybody's 100% a dick, right? Right. It's that idea that it's the idea that broken people are still worthy of love and attention and camaraderie, even though they're very difficult to deal with and very frustrating. And it's kind of like we're better together and we're better as a society if we come together as opposed to ostracizing ourselves from everybody else, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of the message of the Guardian movies, and he kind of keeps doing it over and over and over again. Effective in each way he does it, just slightly different. It's the message of Peacemaker. It's the message of Suicide Squad. It's like James Gunn he has that message nailed. And for a guy who has been canceled, pretty compelling. I mean, he understands that feeling, right? Like, he understands what it means to be ostracized and not given a second chance because of something he did 10 years ago. So I think that he's pretty compelling with that. I think my opinion on what the message he's trying to communicate here is, although I do 100% agree with both of you, that it's very difficult to determine. And I'll contrast it with Man of Steel, right? Man of Steel is 100% about identity. And Superman saying, like, what identity am I supposed to take on? I have the ability to take on any identity I want to. I can be the bad guy. I can be the good guy that everybody looks up to. I can be an alien. I can be a person from the United States. I can be the son of Jor-El. I can be the son of Clark Kent. And he finds his way to cobble together all of these pieces of his identity to go, this is who I am as Superman, right? This movie, to me, the only message that I can pick out of this is sort of like James Gunn saying, don't get distracted by all of the chit chat and the chatter that's out there. Stick true to the guns of being a good person. That's the only message I can say that I can find in this movie, because there's so many things going on. But he's kind of saying that about the conflict, the powerful nation versus the less powerful nation. He's kind of saying like, just be a good person. What would a good person do, right? He's kind of saying that when he's fighting with Lois, and Lois is saying like, well, can you just do these things? He's kind of like, oh, I'm just gonna be a good person. Right. There's a sense that even the Justice Gang is kind of against him a little bit in terms of the way he's doing things, and the Lantern, I can't remember which Lantern is it?
Guy Gardner.
Guy Gardner is kind of like, hey, look, I'm creating a brand here, man. Like, I guess this guy's his whole thing.
Very Guy Gardner. By the way, he was actually very Guy Gardner in the comics. Awesome. He played it very well. I actually, he was pretty funny.
That's awesome. Yeah, he was hilarious. I don't know Guy Gardner from the comics all that well, so
very
that's
dry,
good.
Very kind of a dick. Like that's just kind of how he is. Yeah,
yeah.
And I've with Nathan Fillion. I love Nathan Fillion.
He's awesome.
So I think he nailed it.
Yeah, he nailed it. So that's the only message I can kind of determine. But to be on your guys' side with this, it's very difficult when you have a villain of the week mashup of Saturday morning cartoons to get to an actual message, because there's too many other things that are distracting you from the core. But again, I think the weird thing about this film is that I saw it. My wife and I came out of the theater. I said, what do you think of it? She goes, I liked it, but it's kind of strange. And I went, yeah, I liked it, and it's kind of strange, but I still feel good about the direction of the DCEU because I still feel like I understand where James Gunn is trying to take things. And I like James Gunn, and I'm willing to kind of go along with him. And I love the fact that they're having the, what do they call it? The Elseworlds stories where you can have a different Batman.
Yeah.
Right?
Although I think that could get a little, I'm curious about that because, excuse me, Matt Reeves is writing Batman 2, The Batman 2, and then eventually James Gunn's going to do his own version. Like this could get really convoluted for the general audience at some point. I think what Marvel did very well, and obviously you're never going to replicate what the MCU did. Even Marvel themselves will never be able to do it.
Right.
But what it was at its core were simple stories about character-driven stories. Iron Man is a man who is in many ways seeking redemption for his past mistakes, and he grows, and he's not a perfect person. And it starts on Iron Man 1, it ends with Endgame, and you're like, how the heck did you get here? And it's like, it makes sense when you watch them all. When you talk about Superman is so, he's actually as cosmic as he can be, and as powerful as he is. It's about his personal relationships. That's what ties him to humanity. So it's like did you ever watch Smallville?
I didn't. No, I didn't. But I have a lot of friends who loved it.
I loved it for the first 4 or 5 seasons.
Yeah,
and it was all about he comes into the thinking of like the people in his lives are the most important people to him, and that's why he does a lot of things he does is for the people in his life. And it also coincides with, I think he in many ways puts his personal feelings on humanity in many ways. And I think that's somewhat of the message of Superman, of taking the ones you love, knowing other people feel the same way about others. And he has the ability to actually save these people. And he kind of operates from that type of perspective. But like, I felt the same way coming out of it. My wife, she usually likes things more than I do. And she was like, yeah, it's okay. But like the weird thing was, I have no desire to watch this again. Yeah. Like even Superman Returns, that's not a good movie, but it has good moments. Like this plane scene. I think Man of Steel has a ton of them. I found myself really enjoying Man of Steel when I watched it again, but I really just don't have any desire to be like, man, I want to watch Superman again for this scene. Like there's a couple that are okay, but overall, which is weird for me because I really went into this movie expecting to like it and wanting to see it again. And it's the first time I've seen a movie in a while where I was just sort of like, yeah, I'd be okay if I never saw it again, which is weird.
Yeah, that is weird. That is a weird thing to say. And it is weird to say that I feel that same way, and yet I'm still excited about the next James Gunn movie, which is kind of strange. Like I
see where you're coming from, though. Like the world setting, like there's a lot of elements you can take away, and I'm very curious where he'll take it.
Yeah.
But part of me wonders too if it's like there's been too much made of like we're building a universe versus Marvel starting out was like you just start with good movies and allow those to be good that kind of build its own way in, and sort of they may have put the cart before the horse in many ways.
Yeah, that's a really good take. I think that could 100% be true. Anything else you guys want to touch on about the film before we close out the show?
Did you like the suit?
Ooh, good question. you know what? I felt like the suit fit the vibe, right? Like, here's the thing. And if you want to go back, you get one of the first shows that I ever did was about Man of Steel. And I talked about it with a friend of mine who's a pastor. And Man of Steel is very much, there's a lot of like Christ-like tie-ins that are like very apparent in your face.
There's a
right?
scene where he does this coming off the ship. I mean, they didn't really hide it too much.
Yeah, exactly. And so my friend and I, who's a pastor and a huge Superman fan, talked all through that film about, and I actually sort of love that film. It has its flaws, but every time I go back to revisit it, I'm like, wow. Given the rich history at this point of comic book films that we have, it still stands out to me as having like a very clear goal for what it was trying to achieve and achieving it really well. There's a couple missteps in it, but even the end battle bothers me less and less every time. So if you want to go back and listen to one of the first Story Geeks podcasts ever recorded, not on Orange Grove 55, you have to go search for the Story Geeks and you have to go search for Man of Steel. You can listen to us talk about that. The suit fit Man of Steel really well, right? Because it was a darker suit. This feels like somebody, let's face it, nobody picks up a comic and thinks, oh, I want to go wear this suit tomorrow, because you would look so stupid in it, right? The only reason why we say that we even go along with it is because we loved it as kids, and as kids it made sense, and it's like, so I think though that for this particular suit, I think it kind of fits because of how, this is just what popped into my head. Watching Superman kind of feels like being at a slot machine. There's lots of lights. It's lots of chaos. Yep. And I'm just putting in a thing and going, who's the villain of the week? Oh, crazy. There's more action. And for that type of thing where you're trying to be flashy and kind of distract me, like the suit works for that, in my opinion. It's kind of like a brighter suit he has the trunks, and it's kind of not as ridiculous as it could be, but it's not my favorite suit. I like the Man of Steel suit way better.
I agree with everything you said about Man of Steel. I like that movie more and more as time has gone on, and I love Henry Cavill as Superman. I think he was amazing. Almost made for that role.
Yeah.
The suit in this one, when I first saw it, I hated it. I hated the collar. It looked loose and baggy. It's the Kingdom Come-esque, which, okay, whatever. And the reason I think they probably did that is because the rights are going to come up here in like 5 some odd years, and I think that extends them in a different way.
Oh, okay.
But I actually liked the suit as I was watching the movie. I was kind of surprised. I was like, actually, the suit works. Like, I'm okay with that. But yeah, I think Henry Cavill's suit is much more superhero from the comics, and it was supposed to be like they tied it to Krypton in those ways, which I thought was pretty cool.
Which was really cool, because then you because the Kryptonian suits were not like Saturday morning cartoon bright blue, bright red. Right. Like, you can see why someone would wear that armor. Yes. So then when he takes on the suit, you're like, oh, I get it. There's a connective tissue here. Yeah.
Yep. And I loved in that movie the Krypton scene stuff. I thought that was so cool how phenomenal. They did that. So I think I liked Man of Steel. Like, there's some moments too, like as bad as was it Justice League, where he walks into the building and it explodes. The guy sets off the bomb.
In the courthouse, in the courtroom?
Yeah.
That's BVS.
Batman BVS.
Yeah.
That's not a great movie.
Yeah.
And this is the bro in me. But when Henry Cavill walks in that suit, he is freaking Superman. He's jacked to the gills, who's 100%. Strutting in there, and you're like, that is freaking Superman right
100%.
there. And there's just moments of Snyder's Superman stuff where you're like, that is Superman, or that's Batman. And I didn't, in this one, you had the part where he had the laser eyes, he's doing some stuff. I just didn't have any moments where I'm like, right there, like that's the moment. And just that, I think for me, that was a big thing I took away, of just not having any of those moments for me.
Yeah.
But I think the suit ended up working okay. I'm still not a huge fan of the collar and all that, but I think for as much as I went into it not liking it, I was very surprised at the end. I was like, I kind of like the suit. And I don't know really why. I just ended up throwing it.
Yeah, totally. What did you think, Seymour? What did you think of the suit?
I'll be honest. I'm conflicted. One, I thought it was okay for the movie it was in, but as a Superman suit, no. I didn't like it. It was baggy, it looked cheap, and it looked like it came from a Halloween store.
Ooh.
It did kind
I
of
d-
look like stories.
I didn't. It didn't look like, when you watch a Superman movie, you want to look like Superman is a hero. He didn't look like a hero in that. It looked like he was just in a jumpsuit. It didn't give me the confidence that, he's going to be the hero that saves the day.
Yeah.
It looked like he was just, on the streets of LA in a corner trying to get some money. No, I don't
Times
know.
Square Superman.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Times Square Superman. Yeah, I didn't like it. And I know some people, because when it was first revealed, felt the same way. It just felt a little too baggy.
Yeah.
And at least for me. But again, this is just my opinion. People probably don't even care.
Yeah.
When watching the movie, they probably don't even notice those things.
Yeah, it's interesting. The worst suit I've seen in a long time, and my friend Michael Young, who goes by That Nerd Soul on YouTube, you should check out his content. He's great. Was the White Tiger from Daredevil.
Oh gosh,
it's so terrible. And my friend Michael goes, "Why did he pick that suit up at Party City?" Like, it's just so bad. It was you made me think of it, Seymour, when you said it was baggy, and you mentioned that too, Jared.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about a baggy suit. That suit was atrocious. Yeah, I think I would be curious to hear what the quote unquote normies think of the Superman suit and what they think of the movie too, right? Like, obviously, Jared has the most experience with comic book Superman, probably me next, and then, like you said, Seymour, you're the most normie of the three of us. But I'm also curious to see what kind of legs it will have at the box office.
It's got pretty good leg. It's got a chance at 700 mil.
It does.
I think it's going to end up beating Fantastic Four.
Do you really?
I actually think
this is the next podcast we need.
I think, yeah, and I haven't seen. I'm gonna watch Fantastic Four. I was sick last week. I was gonna see it last week, and my daughter, our whole house was sick last week, so we didn't get anything done. But from what I'm seeing at the box office, it looks like it may end up beating out Fantastic Four. But what's funny is if you look at tickets sold, Man of Steel blows out Superman. It's just with inflation, Man of Steel actually has done much better.
Yeah.
I just think. I think it angers me so much that Warner Brothers, like, they were in the early 2000s, like, they were on top of the world. They had Lord of the Rings, they had the Nolan Batman, you had Harry Potter, and since then they can't get out of their own way. And I think Man of Steel was a really good, solid first Superman, and they just decided, like, we got to catch up to Marvel, and they just rushed everything too quick.
Yep.
And they tried to combine Doomsday storyline and the death of Superman and all these, and they tried to do it all in one movie, and you're like, just no, like, there's so many things. And I think that's the thing that's frustrating, because I'm not a huge Zack Snyder fan, but I think his vision was one, at least for me, I'm more on board with his vision of Superman than I am for James Gunn of what I've seen so far.
Sure.
Now, that doesn't mean the greater DCU can't be better in general, but I think the vision for what he wanted to do, which is much more like godlike, and that's kind of DC Comics, like, we're the Greek gods, the mythical gods, and the things that they do. It was a very serious movie versus Superman, and I honestly think there's somewhere in between is where Superman kind of typically lies. Like, he is serious, but he does have a sense of humor, but he's also not Star-Lord. And I felt like in this movie, Gunn wrote Superman many times like Star-Lord. And that works for Star-Lord. It works for Chris Pratt. It just doesn't work for Superman.
Yeah.
And I think it was just, kind of a little more, like you were saying, overreaction from Snyderverse of, like, going in this other direction.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Anything else that came up in the movie that you guys want to talk about?
Oh, man. I have a lot of things I could talk. I'm trying to think here on the things that we're really griping about. Well, the part, like, the pocket universe.
Oh, yeah.
I like it because it was really leaning into the comic bookiness of it all.
Sure.
But I was so confused at Lex in that he's a bad guy, but at that point he was almost like, I'm just this guy trying to do these things here in my way. And then he, like, when he randomly kills the hot dog vendor that Superman knew, and you're like, he just committed murder for no. And then it's like, but then they go back to playing him kind of like he's bad, but he's. I think the way they played Lex, like, I think it'd been better off to be. I think they have done this too much in movies, but it's like you understand more from his perspective, maybe, as to why he's doing those things. Like Thanos, like, you may not agree with Thanos, but you're like, you understand at least his perspective of why he's doing what he's doing.
Right.
And I think without that, like, we didn't know why Lex was doing what he's doing. And we really, like you were saying too, we didn't know why Superman was doing what he's doing. So you just have people on screen doing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And there really wasn't an overarching Superman's vision versus Lex's vision of the world.
Right.
And like those things battling each other. Like, I think there's a lot of cool elements to this movie that could have been there that just none of them, it seemed like everything was like a rough draft and nothing was just flushed out more. And I don't know, I think you guys agree with that. Like, I think that'd have been better off for Lex, of a little bit more backstory to him. But I think really the thing, and what you guys think about this, do you like the way the movie started by explaining versus showing? Because I personally don't like it.
Anytime that happens, I'm against it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, just show me every time. Don't explain to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if Superman's going to lose his first battle, you need to see that.
Yeah.
But I'd like to see Superman do awesome stuff before that.
Yeah.
Like even a montage. And I felt like as soon as it started out, I was just like, oh, we're already getting explained. Oh, no. And I get not want to do an origin. I get that. Like everyone's okay, fine. But yeah, you can go a little bit more in terms of not just giving you a like, it works for Star Wars because you're explaining the political nature of what's going on, but you're not saying like, you know, Anakin turned bad and here he is as Darth Vader. And you're like, well, how the hell did you turn Darth Vader? Why did you turn to Darth Vader? And you're like, no, we're already past that. And you're like, I need to know these things. Yeah, stuff like that I think could have been done a little bit better.
Yeah, I think like we have examples of capitalist thinking that has gone too far. In fact, there's real world examples. Like, just I don't know if you guys remember, because I'm old, but I remember the Enron scandal, right? I mean, they have the guys on tape saying like, "Oh, we can't wait for this thing to keep burning down to the ground because it means we make more money." Like, that's like talk about crony capitalism. And I don't think you needed to do all that much with Lex Luthor to get who he was as that crony capitalist guy. Like, all you had to do is see him checking his bank account a couple times and being like, how much money am I making today? Right. Or and like maybe Superman foils something that he's trying to make money on. He's like, this son of a gun, I got to kill this guy.
Like, it hits the stock price and all of a sudden his net worth to go, yes.
Exactly.
Stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not like we aren't also, by the way, there is probably no better time in American history than to have a Lex Luthor character be the villain. We see the Luigi Mangione thing. I don't know if you guys saw this, but the other shooting that there was a CEO involved in that. They're wondering if there's a tie-in to that. There's this idea that if you track the economy during the U.S. economy during the 1970s and 80s, and when you see the wealth of the rich split from the middle class, and you go, that Lex Luthor is the embodiment of what it means to have greed over all else, right? It's the Gordon Gekko of the 2020s. And I feel like it's not that difficult to say, let's paint a character who has no humanity and only cares about the dollar amounts and the bottom line of whatever he's doing. Pit that up against a guy like Superman, I think is a really fascinating take that would have meant something to our society almost, right?
Yeah.
But to your point, he's just a really angry guy at Superman for some apparent reason that we don't know, right? Like, so yeah, that would have been cool to have some, and that's what's crazy is that I don't think, as we have talked more and more about this, almost to the length of the movie, but as we talked more and more about this, as always happens in Story Geeks, the movie is 2 hours, we go for 3.
I love it.
As we talk more and more about this movie, the thing I keep thinking about is like, man, it's not that difficult to transform it into a movie that I absolutely love. It's just a matter of like tweaking a few things and taking these things and pulling them out and concentrating here a little bit more. So again, interesting choices. I think, and this is my personality, okay? When I go to write a movie, I tend to be an overthinker. I'm the kind of person who I'll watch the news events. I'll watch both sides of the news events and both takes of the news events and talk about it with my wife for an hour and a half about what's really going on here and why is it really going on and all that kind of stuff. So I appreciate movies that allow me to escape, but I never see them as fine art. I never see them. When I see what, like, let's say Zack Snyder was trying to do with Man of Steel, I go, man, you're getting really, really, really close to fine art. I mean, that is a beautiful thing to talk about. What does identity mean, and what does this character's identity mean? But when you just say like, here's some cool things to see on a screen, I just kind of, it just doesn't do a whole lot for me, to be honest.
Yeah, like I enjoy a good popcorn movie. Like what did I just see that was that? Happy Gilmore 2.
Oh yeah.
I loved it.
I
It's
did
not
too.
a great movie.
Right.
It's kind of silly, but I loved Happy Gilmore growing up, and for me I was like, this is great. Like I don't have to think about it. Like I put it on and I was chuckling. I actually intended to do work while I was watching it. It was everybody had gone to bed. And I just found myself watching and just enjoying it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And movies can be that way. It's just certain movies like Superman or certain ones, Batman movies, like those aren't necessarily the movies, but you're right. They're also not fine art. They're somewhere in the middle
right.
of where these things are supposed to lie.
Yeah.
Sorry, were you saying something, Seymour? I mean, cut you
Oh
off.
no, I was just gonna say I agree. I thought it was like a perfect movie for Netflix.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's actually a really good way of describing it. In fact, I said to my wife after we saw it, because I legit thought that Happy Gilmore 2 was going to be absolute garbage. I had that in my head. Like, yeah, because the first one became a cult classic. How do you repeat a cult classic? It's very difficult, right?
Mhm.
Although I hear that Naked Gun is actually getting really good reviews. Which
I've heard that too.
mind blowing. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm kind of tempted to go see it.
Yeah, me too. Maybe we'll do another Story Geeks on that. Although Story Geeks show does not work really well on movies that are not deep.
I love the idea of Liam Neeson from Taken also doing a funny, goofy, and I think the world needs parody comedies.
100%.
Like I'm so happy to see a parody comedy in theaters now.
Yeah.
In a way, like I hope it is good and I hope it does great because I want more of them. I think scary movies, like there's so many things you could mock right now.
Oh, dude.
That just I think it would be so good for society to just laugh a little bit at some of this stuff.
100% agree with you. Yeah, and so I go into Happy Gilmore 2 thinking it's gonna suck, but to Seymour's point, it is like a movie custom made for Netflix.
Yep.
It's expensive, but it's not $200 million expensive. It's like I think it was $35 million. I want to say was the cost of that movie.
I think probably something like that.
Yeah, it's easy to watch through the whole thing. It's very dumb, but it's like, hey, look, it's like it's hitting the nostalgia piece of things. In fact, the only thing that I really thought was like really poorly done were his kids. Not his daughter, because his daughter I thought was fine, but his sons were so stupid that I was like, I can't get behind this part of it.
I thought it was funny because there was just a bunch of young happies who were always fighting, running around, and it was just like the part where they're sitting there and he's like, "No fighting in here, go take it to the basement." You're just like, oh, that's so funny.
Well, here's the thing that I said to my wife. And again, I think too deeply about all of these things. Okay, so this is going to sound so stupid to you, but I said the reason why Happy Gilmore fighting was funny is not because he's a violent person, but because he's in an environment where violence is like the most reviled thing, and he comes from hockey,
which is normal.
So it's not that like so when I'm watching his kids, I'm like, these kids are just reprobates to be reprobates. Like Happy was just doing his thing in the wrong environment, right? Like
that's true.
That was the only reason I was like, the kids don't make sense to me. But to go back to Seymour's point, I think is 100% spot on. That is exactly the kind of movie that Netflix wants all the time. It's going to be probably one of the biggest movies that Netflix has ever had on the service.
I think I saw something. It was one of, if not the most watched thing on Netflix ever, or one of them already. I want to say I saw some stat. I need to look. I saw some headline pop up the other day about it was already beaten some Netflix record after being out for like a week.
Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised.
It surprised me because like Seymour said, it's a tailor-made movie for Netflix.
And by the way, how is Julie Bowen more beautiful now than when I was a kid? I had a crush on her when I was a kid. And like by the way, the way that she dies, I was like, what is this? But
that was a weird part of the movie too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm like, in her scenes, I'm like, good Lord, like she's gorgeous. And she's like, what? I'm guessing she's in her 50s. I don't know. But whatever it is, I was just like, kudos to you.
It's a thing, man. I was just telling my wife this. I was like, because we started watching the X-Files over again. I'm like, Gillian Anderson modern day is so much more attractive than Gillian Anderson 90s. It's Kate Winslet. I feel the same way. Like all of that era is like, man, they're really doing a good job of doing whatever they're doing.
The upkeep is doing very well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and before I forget, I was going to mention, you talking about Superman and Lex, to take it back to that.
Yeah.
There was a really good opportunity, and this gets biblical. So like I myself, I'm a Christian, but like you've got the part in the Bible where the devil goes to Jesus and says like, I'll give you this. I'll give you the earth. And he's like, you can't give me what you don't have. That would have been a really interesting scene to have Lex be like, work with me and I will give you, look at all, and Superman being like, you can't give this to me. You don't like kind of having like leaning into that a little bit and like making it more of a serious thing. Like he's tried to approach Superman to get on his side. And that's maybe one reason why he hates him, because he understands Superman is a better man than him. And that also makes him mad, which they've done that in the comics before. They've kind of delved that into where Lex is insanely jealous of Superman. But I think the scene that maybe I hated the most in the whole movie was when he barged in to Lex's office and throwing stuff around. It just wasn't Superman. He wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Like he would just be calm and stoic.
I can't even remember that scene, dude. Like
it's whenever Lex is talking to the guy that runs the TV show, Michael Ian Black, I think, who's played him. Okay. And he walks in because something happened. He took Crypto to the pocket universe, and he just the door. I mean, it's a cool scene of like the door flies off the hinges. He flips the desk over, but they film him, and Superman's just like losing his cool, yelling at him like, "Where's the dog?" and all. And Lex clearly the entire time is like in control, like he's the alpha of the room. And there's been these scenes in Superman cartoons and comics before, and there's one that someone pointed out on Twitter X not that long ago where Superman's just flowing. He's just flying outside of Lex's window, and Lex is trying to make him deals like, hey, take this, and Superman doesn't respond. And by him just sitting there letting Lex make all these offers, it enrages him. He starts throwing things at him like, what do you want? And he's like, I'll be watching you. And like it's like this whole dichotomy of like he can't be bought, and that enrages Lex more. And Superman he wouldn't come in there just flipping tables over, screaming. Like just so much of the way I think Superman was played was much more almost angsty, which is not really Superman. He's much more stoic, and not that he never loses his cool, but like you got to really push Superman for him to really like, lose his emotions.
Yeah. There's a portion of the way that it was written, and I don't think it's as bad in the finished film as it felt in the trailers. But when I was watching the trailers, which, by the way, I did not like the trailers. I went into the movie thinking, like, this movie, I'm not even sure about it because the trailers I did not like them.
So the complete opposite of Man of Steel. Man of Steel trailers, so good.
Exactly. Man of Steel is like, I have to see this movie tomorrow because this is, like, phenomenal.
Oh, gosh.
I kept thinking to myself, like, did they make Superman a frat boy? Because Superman's not a frat boy. Like,
I know.
There's a sense that, like, Superman is innocent in his view of reality, right? So, like, for example, you would say that Superman has a fairly objective view of morality, for example. It's not the kind of thing where you would say, these days relativism is very popular. Oh, your experience is different than my experience, so I can't say you're doing anything wrong. But that is not the history of Superman. The history of Superman is like, no, there is such a thing as truth, there is such a thing as justice, and there's such a thing as the American way, and I'm going to live that way, even if other people around me in America, or massive amounts of people in America, are not living this way. That's not the proper way. This is the proper way, right? Which means he has a very objective view of the world and of what morality is. I do think that this movie could have done that a little better as well, because it did feel to me like I would say that he does feel like a character who has a lot of empathy, which is good and cool. In fact, that's probably his strongest strong suit, is that he feels like an empathetic superhero.
Yes.
But I don't know where he objectively stands on anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's where it gets a little bit like out of the character of Superman and into, that's where I think the times he feels the most like, and you said this earlier, Jared, almost like leaning towards dumb, right? Yeah. It's not innocent. It's not, because like when I have an objective view of morality, I might say something like stealing is always bad, right? And then and then the character comes along and says like, oh, I don't have dinner, man. Like if I don't steal, like I don't eat. So like, how can you tell me stealing is bad? Because then I don't get to eat, right? And then Superman has to go, oh yeah, well if stealing is bad, then what do I need to do? Oh, Lex is stealing meals from people, then Lex is the bad guy. I got to make sure that this guy gets fed. That's the position you put Superman in to make him go, what do I do with this scenario? Because like, I don't want to take this guy to jail. He was just trying to eat. Well, why doesn't he have food? Oh, because Lex Luthor is taking his food. Okay, great. I got to go fight it, Lex Luthor, or manipulate Lex Luthor and make sure he's doing the right thing. Whereas Batman goes, no, I beat your face into the ground because you stole that, and I'm going to go beat up Lex Luthor after I'm done, right? Like, that's the difference. It's like the difference between the two characters. And so I think that because there's no objectivity in what Superman is saying, why is this other country bad? Why is this other country good? Why is Lois Lane's opinion too nuanced? Why is whatever he's battling internally? It'd be nice to see that be a central point of contention, as opposed to if he's just empathetic, then sometimes he does come across as a little bit like, dude, you got to use your brain more than this, because empathy is not just going to get you through life in every situation, right?
Right. Well, and it's like the part where he's arguing with Lois about his actions in that country.
Yeah.
And he kind of he does come across like very reactionary, emotional to that. But Superman would have thought that through. Yes. Like in the comics, he would have known taking this action would lead to the X, Y, and Z. And he would simply say, I took the actions I felt necessary. I'm willing to take the consequences of my actions. Yeah. And it always reminds me, there's a comic and I love Captain America as well. And there's a scene in one of the Captain America comics where he says, like, when you're, I forget the exact quote. Basically, it's like if you're asked to basically, like, I stand for, truth and justice, whatever.
Right.
And if the world is telling you to move and you're wrong, you say, no, you move. And it's like you impose your will on those around you because you feel that strongly about it. That's also what Superman does. Like but if he comes across a situation where he has to, and that's why I even said Man of Steel where he kills Zod. I like those where he has to put those to a test. Like, he doesn't want to kill. But if you're in that spot, if you don't make a choice, you're also making a choice. Exactly. So it's like, and I think those are interesting things to put heroes into. But to act as if, he just is like, he hasn't thought this through all the way. I just felt it was very un-Superman-like. Like, he would have known taking these actions, it would have caused cascading effects and, all that stuff.
I 100% agree. Now, I know that, Seymour, you have a hard out, so we'll go ahead and stop the show there. Great conversation. I really enjoyed talking about Superman with you guys. Seymour, tell the folks where they can find you and where they can get some of your insights on the Comcast earnings call, because I know you're going to talk about that.
Yeah, I forgot. I thought it was going to be Comcast. Yeah. You can find me on X at Mr Seymour Duck. And I just want to say thank you for inviting me, and I was had fun.
Awesome. I always feel like I want to hear more from Seymour, but I'm talking too much to be able to hear more from Seymour. So it's my
Seymour. If I'm ever talking too much, just tell me to shut up.
No. I like to listen.
Seymour has good insights. Thanks for joining us, Seymour. Definitely go follow him, and for sure, one of the things that the Orange Grove 55 show does, and if you're a fan of the show, you know this, is that they always talk about Disney leadership, Comcast leadership, the marketplace of entertainment, and what is going on, and how it is being led, and what the financials are. Definitely stay tuned to Orange Grove 55 for a lot of that information. Jared, where can the folks find you?
You can find me on Cap the Magic everywhere, and thank you again for having me. I thoroughly enjoyed discussing all these things and movies and shows and everything like that. I do daily videos, theme parks, pop culture. Is the earnings call tomorrow, Seymour?
Oh, it was today.
Oh, it's today. Okay, I'll have a video on it then tomorrow, I'm sure. I knew they're all coming up at certain times. Like, as much as I don't like watching financial reports, I typically watch those as well. But you can find me Twitter, X, all that stuff, Cap the Magic, and then we also have, my wife and I have a podcast where we talk about theme park, actual in-park tips for Disney and Universal at CTM Podcast on YouTube as well. So if you want some theme park tips, tricks, reviews, all that stuff like that, you can catch that over there. And then on the main channel, I kind of cover the kind of like what Orange Grove 55, the leadership, the trends, what's going on in the news, and things like that.
Amazing. It's great to have you both on. Really had a good time.
I did too.
Let me know when you see Fantastic Four, Jared, because I want to talk about that too.
I'm gonna hopefully see it this weekend. That's my plan. So yeah, I love breaking down movies and shows. My wife says I'm too critical. I think I'm fair, but I enjoy it. So yeah, I will let you know for sure.
Amazing.
I'll say this: I liked Fantastic Four better.
I did too.
I've heard that from a couple people that it wasn't the best thing they've ever seen, but they liked it better than Superman.
Yeah. The art direction, I mean, we'll get into this in the podcast. The art direction is amazing. The art direction is fantastic.
Galactus looks pretty awesome from what I've seen.
Yes, watch it in IMAX if you can.
Yes, I saw it in IMAX and it's amazing.
And I've heard Pedro doesn't ruin the movie.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't. Now, that'll be a really good conversation. So stay tuned to Orange Grove 55 because we will also break down Fantastic Four and get back into the MCU. My name is Jay Sherer. You can find me at How Stories Work with Jay Sherer, where I'm having conversations a lot like this, or I'm doing solo videos where I'm breaking down a movie and trying to understand it a little bit better. Thanks for everybody for joining us on Superman. Always leave your comments down below on what you thought of Superman and where we got something wrong. You can call us out and let us know where you think we got it wrong. But stay tuned because we're going to have more content coming up with more comic book movies. So we will see you next time.
See you guys.
Bye.
Don't forget to subscribe to OG55 and become a member today.